Hey there, it's me Eden. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to my channel and visit my Patreon page for early access, link in the description.
She was so bad at this. Ava rested her chin on her hand, watching her curiously. You sure you're good? Martha hesitated. Ava wasn't asking in a way that felt casual. She was actually asking, like she wanted a real answer. Martha swallowed, fingers curling into the fabric of her jeans under the table. She could just brush it off. Keep playing it safe. But wasn't she trying to stop doing that? She exhaled slowly. It's just been a weird day. Ava nodded, like that made perfect sense. Weird good or weird bad? Martha hesitated. Weird, new. Ava's lips quirked slightly. New's not always bad. Martha's stomach flipped. She wanted to believe that. She needed to believe that. Before she could say anything else, the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch. Ava stood, grabbing her tray. Later, dude. Martha nodded quickly. Yeah, later. Ava gave her one last unreadable look before walking away. Martha let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She had survived lunch. She had been noticed. And the world hadn't ended. Maybe, just maybe, this was a step toward something real. Something that wasn't just hers, but something the world could start to see. She wasn't sure if she was ready for that. But it was happening anyway. And for the first time, she wasn't running from it. She was leaning in. The rest of the school day crawled by in a haze. Martha sat through class after class, barely absorbing anything. She tapped her fingers against her desk, her nails, softly polished, barely noticeable, catching the light every so often. She tugged at her sleeves, feeling the familiar comfort of the sweater against her skin, grounding herself. She wasn't doing anything different. She wasn't acting different. And yet, she felt like a live wire, hyper-aware of every interaction, every glance in her direction. Ava's words had unsettled something inside her. You look different. Martha had spent all morning waiting for someone to notice. And now that someone had, it made everything feel real. She wanted to hold on to that feeling. She wanted to believe that maybe, people would start to see her for who she was. But she also wasn't sure if she was ready for that. She could still pretend that this was all just an experiment. That she was just testing the waters. But the truth was, there was no going back. She knew who she was now. And the only thing scarier than no one noticing was the idea that one day, everyone would. By the time the last bell rang, Martha felt drained. Not in the usual way, like she had just survived another long school day, but in a different way. Like she had been carrying something heavy all day, and now that she was finally free to put it down, she wasn't sure how. Brenda was waiting for her by the front doors, arms crossed, foot tapping impatiently. Took you long enough. Martha rolled her eyes. You could have just left without me. Brenda scoffed. As if. Martha huffed out a tired laugh, adjusting her backpack strap. Let's just go. Brenda fell into step beside her as they walked out of the building, the cool afternoon air brushing against Martha's face. She inhaled deeply, letting it clear her head. Brenda glanced at her. So? How'd it go? Martha hesitated. Weird, she admitted. Brenda smirked. Weird good or weird bad? Martha exhaled. Weird, new. Brenda shot her a look. You sound like a fortune cookie. Martha groaned. Oh my God, shut up. Brenda cackled. But then, softer, seriously. Are you okay? Martha hesitated. Then, slowly, she nodded. Yeah. Brenda studied her for a second longer, then nodded back. Good. They walked in silence for a few moments, the sound of their footsteps echoing against the pavement. Then, Ava Kelly sat with me at lunch. Brenda nearly tripped. Wait, what? Martha smirked. Yeah. Just randomly. Out of nowhere. Brenda's eyes widened. Ava Kelly sat with you? Martha rolled her eyes. Wow, thanks. Brenda grinned. I just mean, damn. That's kinda major. Martha's stomach flipped. Is it? Brenda nodded. Oh, totally. Ava doesn't just sit with people. She's, like, cool in that intimidating, doesn't care what anyone thinks kind of way, asterisk. Martha thought back to their conversation. The way Ava had looked at her. The way she had noticed something. She swallowed. She said I looked different. Brenda raised an eyebrow. And? Martha hesitated. And that was it. She asked if I cut my hair or something. Brenda smirked. Wow! Deep analysis. Martha groaned. It's not about what she said. It's about the fact that she noticed something at all. Brenda hummed thoughtfully. Well, yeah. That's how it starts. Martha frowned. What do you mean? Brenda shrugged. People don't just suddenly see something all at once. It's gradual. Little things add up. They notice something, even if they can't put their finger on it. And then one day, a boom. It clicks. Martha's heart pounded. And then what? Brenda smirked. Then they either accept it or they don't. But that's their problem, not yours. Martha swallowed hard. Could it really be that simple? Would people really just see her one day? Would there be a moment where she didn't have to prove herself anymore? She wasn't sure. But she wanted to believe it. Brenda nudged her. One step at a time, babe. Martha inhaled deeply. Then nodded. One step at a time. The walk home felt different. Not because the street had changed. Not because the air smelled any different or because the sounds of the neighborhood, distant traffic, birds chirping, the occasional dog barking, weren't the same as always. But because she had changed. Martha could feel it. The weight of the day sat on her shoulders, heavy but not unbearable. She had done it. She had walked into school as herself, even if no one had known it. She had sat through classes, spoken to classmates, existed in a space where everyone still called her Martin. She had waited, expected, for something to happen. And something had. Ava had noticed. It wasn't a big moment. It wasn't dramatic or life-altering. But it had meant something. And now, she had to figure out what came next. Brenda walked beside her, humming softly under her breath, her hands tucked into her pockets. She didn't say anything, just matched Martha's pace, letting the silence settle between them. Martha was grateful for that. She needed the quiet. She needed to let herself feel everything before she could even begin to put it into words. She kept glancing down at her hands, at the soft pink polish on her nails. It was still there. Still real. Still hers. And no one had noticed. Not at school. Not even her mother. She didn't know if that was a relief or if it hurt. Maybe both. Brenda finally broke the silence. So, you gonna tell Michelle? Martha blinked, snapping out of her thoughts. Tell her what? Brenda gave her a look. About today. About Ava. About the fact that you're officially out here living as yourself. Martha hesitated. I mean, it's not like I came out or anything. Brenda smirked. Not yet. Martha groaned. You make it sound like some big event. Brenda shrugged. Isn't it? Martha exhaled. I don't know. Brenda nudged her lightly. Well, you should tell Michelle. She's been rooting for this longer than I have. Martha bit her lip. She did want to tell Michelle. Michelle would get it. She wouldn't just nod and say cool like Ava had. She would freak out, ask for every tiny detail, tell Martha exactly how proud she was. And Martha needed to hear that. But a part of her was also scared. Scared to say it out loud. Scared to admit that today had meant something. That she wasn't just trying things on anymore. That she wasn't just dipping her toes into who she was. That she was actually doing it. Brenda nudged her again. She's gonna lose her mind, you know. Martha laughed softly. I know. Brenda smirked. So tell her already. Martha inhaled deeply, then pulled out her phone. She stared at the screen for a moment, fingers hovering over Michelle's contact. Then, finally, she started typing. Martha, so, something happened today. A minute passed. Then, Michelle, OMG, what, tell me everything right now. Martha smiled. Then she took another step forward. And started typing. Martha sat on her bed, her phone resting in her hands, her fingers hovering over the screen. She had sent Michelle the message. She had taken the first step. Now, she just had to figure out how to explain everything. Because how did she put into words what today had meant? How did she explain the strange mix of fear and excitement, of disappointment and validation, of feeling both invisible and seen all at once? She let out a slow breath, then started typing. Martha, I wore one of my new outfits to school today. It wasn't the biggest thing she could have said, but it was the truth. And right now, that was enough. Michelle's reply came almost instantly. Michelle, OMG Martha? Like out? Martha, yeah. I mean, it wasn't like a big thing. Just jeans, a sweater, some lip gloss. Subtle. Michelle, subtle my ass, that's huge. Martha bit her lip, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. She knew Michelle would freak out. And honestly, she kind of needed that. She needed someone to tell her that this wasn't small, that this meant something. Because even though she had felt it, deep in her bones, she needed to hear it from someone else. Michelle sent another message. Michelle, how did it feel? Martha exhaled, thinking. Martha, weird. Big. Scary. Good. All at the same time. Michelle, that makes sense. Was anyone weird about it? Martha hesitated. Martha, no one really said anything. My mom didn't notice. Most people at school didn't either. A pause. Then, Michelle. Oh, damn. Martha swallowed. That was the part that had gotten to her the most. That she had taken this huge step, had done something that felt impossible just days ago. And the world had kept turning like nothing had changed. Michelle sent another message. Michelle, that sucks. I mean, it's good that no one was awful about it, but also, how are people not seeing you? Martha let out a breathy laugh. Martha, exactly. Michelle, well, screw them. I see you. Brenda sees you. And eventually, they will too. Martha's chest tightened. She needed to hear that. She wiped at her eyes quickly before responding. Martha, thanks. I really needed that. Michelle, always, babe. You're doing it. You're really doing it. Martha read those words over and over. She was doing it. Even if no one else noticed yet. Even if she still had so many more steps to take. She was doing it. And that was enough for today. Martha lay back on her bed, staring up at the ceiling, her phone still in her hand. Michelle's words were still fresh in her mind. You're doing it. You're really doing it. She had needed that. More than she even realized. Because today had felt complicated. She had wanted so badly to be seen. To have someone really look at her and know. But when no one did, it made her feel like she was still trapped, still halfway between two worlds. Like she had taken a huge step forward, only to realize she still had so much further to go. Her stomach twisted. She had been hoping for something bigger. For some kind of confirmation that this wasn't all in her head. That the changes she was making weren't invisible. That maybe Brenda was right. Maybe people didn't see things all at once. Maybe they needed time, just like she had needed time. She exhaled, running a hand through her hair. She wasn't going to figure this all out in a day. This wasn't a movie where she woke up one morning, stepped outside as her real self, and everything magically fell into place. It was messy. It was slow. And she was still learning how to be okay with that. A soft knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. Hey, it's me. Brenda. Martha sat up slightly. Come in. Brenda pushed the door open, leaning against the frame. So, first day as Martha, huh? Martha huffed out a laugh. Something like that. Brenda tilted her head, studying her. You look tired. Martha let out a slow breath. I feel tired. Brenda smirked. Yeah. Welcome to womanhood. We're always tired. Martha chuckled softly, shaking her head. Brenda walked over and flopped onto the bed beside her, stretching out. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, did it feel different? Brenda asked. Martha stared down at her hands. Yeah. Brenda turned her head toward her. Good different? Bad different? Martha hesitated. Both. Brenda hummed. That makes sense. Martha glanced at her. Does it? Brenda smirked. Babe, you're literally rewriting your entire life. Of course it's gonna feel weird. Martha swallowed. Yeah. Brenda sat up slightly, propping herself on one elbow. But you're still glad you did it, right? Martha thought about that. The nerves, the fear, the weight of the day pressing on her shoulders. And then she thought about Michelle's words. You're doing it. You're really doing it. She inhaled. Yeah, I am. Brenda grinned. That's my girl. Martha's chest tightened. Because she was. She was Martha. Even if the world didn't see her yet. Even if she still had a long way to go. She was here. And that had to be enough for now. Martha sat with her back against the headboard, her fingers absently playing with the hem of her sweater. Brenda was still lounging on her bed, scrolling through her phone, legs crossed at the ankles like she had no intention of leaving anytime soon. And honestly, Martha didn't want her to leave. The silence between them wasn't heavy or awkward. It was the kind of silence that only existed between people who didn't need to fill it. Brenda had been the first person to really see her, to call her Martha like it was the easiest thing in the world. And right now, Martha needed that energy. She needed to feel real. She needed to hold on to the truth of who she was, especially after a day of being invisible. She tugged at her sleeve again, lost in thought. Brenda glanced at her. You're thinking too hard again. Martha huffed out a soft laugh. I feel like I've been thinking too hard all day. Brenda smirked. Yeah, well, it's kind of a big day, babe. Martha sighed, tipping her head back against the headboard. It didn't feel big. Brenda raised an eyebrow. Are you kidding? You walked into school as yourself today. That's freaking huge. Martha frowned. But nothing happened. Brenda sat up, setting her phone down. What do you mean? Martha gestured vaguely. I mean, no one really noticed. Mom didn't notice. Most people at school didn't either. It's like I was just, she hesitated, searching for the right word. Background noise. Brenda's expression softened. That's what's bothering you, huh? Martha swallowed, nodding. I thought it would feel different. Like, I don't know. Like the world would shift somehow. But it didn't. Brenda leaned back on her hands, thinking. You know, I think you were expecting some kind of movie moment. Martha frowned. What? Brenda smirked. You know, where you walk in, and suddenly everything slows down, and people notice, and you have this dramatic realization that this is who you were meant to be. Martha groaned. Oh my God, shut up. Brenda cackled. I'm just saying. That's not how real life works. It's not all, cue the inspirational music, and boom, the world sees you for who you are. Martha huffed. I know that. Brenda tilted her head. Do you, though? Martha sighed, rubbing her temples. I thought it would feel more real. Brenda was quiet for a second. Then, gently, she said, it is real. Martha blinked. Brenda sat up fully, crossing her legs. Martha, you wore your real clothes today. You showed up as yourself today. The world didn't stop, yeah. But that doesn't mean it wasn't real. Martha swallowed hard. But no one saw it. Brenda gave her a knowing look. You saw it. Martha's breath hitched. Brenda continued, and that's the part that matters. No one else gets to tell you when you're real. No one else gets to decide that for you. Martha's chest tightened. Because she knew Brenda was right. She was Martha. Even if no one else saw it yet. Even if people still called her Martin. Even if she was still stuck in this weird, in-between space where she existed, but not quite fully. She wasn't waiting for permission anymore. She was here. And maybe that had to be enough for now. Brenda nudged her lightly. One step at a time, babe. Martha exhaled, nodding. One step at a time. And for the first time all day, she believed it. Martha didn't sleep much that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the house settling around her. Her mind wouldn't shut off. She kept thinking about what Brenda had said. You saw it. And that's the part that matters. It made sense. It should have been enough. But it still hurt. She had taken a huge step today, had finally been Martha outside of the safety of her bedroom. And the world had kept spinning like nothing had changed. She turned onto her side, curling into herself. She wanted people to see her. She wanted them to know. Not just Michelle. Not just Brenda. Everyone. But was she really ready for that? Her stomach twisted. Maybe she wasn't. Not yet. She took a deep breath, trying to push the thoughts away. Tomorrow was a new day. A new step. She'd figure it out. She had to. Morning came too quickly. The alarm on her phone buzzed loudly, pulling her from the restless haze of sleep. Martha groaned, burying her face into her pillow. She wasn't ready for today. Her body felt heavy, her mind sluggish. But she had to get up. Had to keep going. One step at a time. With a deep breath, she forced herself to sit up. The air in her room was cool against her skin. Her clothes from yesterday were still draped over the chair near her desk. Her jeans. Her sweater. Proof that yesterday had happened. That she had done it. She ran a hand through her hair, staring at them. Then she stood up. She crossed the room, opened her dresser drawer, and pulled out another outfit. Something similar to yesterday's. Safe. Comfortable. A small step forward, but a step nonetheless. She changed slowly, letting herself feel the weight of the fabric, the way it settled against her skin. The way it felt right. She swiped on another thin coat of lip gloss, pressed her lips together, and exhaled. Then she turned to the mirror. And there she was. Not Martin. Martha. She was still here. Still real. Even if the world hadn't caught up yet. She took one last deep breath before grabbing her backpack. Then she walked out the door. One step at a time. The morning routine felt different. Not because anything huge had changed, but because she had changed. Yesterday had happened. She had stepped into the world as herself, even if no one else saw it. And today? Today she was doing it again. It wasn't just a one-time thing. It wasn't a fleeting moment of courage that she could brush off later. She was choosing this. Every day. Step by step. She grabbed her backpack and headed downstairs, her pulse quickening as she walked into the kitchen. Her mother was at the counter, flipping through a cookbook while sipping her coffee. Brenda was already at the table, casually scrolling on her phone. Everything looked the same. The clinking of coffee mugs, the hum of the refrigerator, the smell of buttered toast. So why did it feel like she was the only thing that had shifted? Brenda looked up first. Her gaze flickered over Martha's outfit, another fitted sweater, another pair of jeans that actually felt like hers. Her lips twitched into a smirk. But she didn't say anything. Just gave her a slight nod. Approval. Martha's heart steadied. She took a seat at the table, careful, waiting. Would her mother notice today? Would she glance over and see something different? Martha picked up a piece of toast, nibbling at the corner, hyper-aware of every tiny movement. She waited. And waited. And nothing. Her mother just turned a page in her cookbook, humming softly to herself. Martha's stomach twisted. Brenda must have noticed her shift in expression because she leaned over slightly, murmuring under her breath, "Babe, stop expecting fireworks." Martha exhaled sharply. "I know. I just..." She trailed off, unsure how to finish the sentence. Brenda sighed dramatically. "Look, do you want Mom to start interrogating you?" "Oh, Martin, why are you dressing different? Is there something you want to tell me?" She mimicked their mother's voice with an exaggerated expression. Martha shot her a glare. "Not funny." Brenda snickered, stealing a piece of toast from Martha's plate. "Kind of funny." Martha groaned but couldn't fight the small smile tugging at her lips. Her mother finally looked up from her book. "You two are up early." Brenda shrugged. "We're just responsible students, obviously." Martha bit back a laugh. "Yeah, sure." Her mother smiled slightly, taking another sip of her coffee. "Well, don't be late." Martha hesitated. That was it? Another day, another morning where her mother didn't even see her? She should have felt relieved. But instead, she just felt invisible. Brenda nudged her knee under the table. "Patience," she mouthed. Martha inhaled deeply, forcing herself to let it go. Brenda was right. Things didn't click overnight. People needed time. And if she kept showing up as herself, eventually, the world would have no choice but to see her. Right? She wasn't sure. But she wanted to believe it. So she forced a small smile, finished her toast, and grabbed her backpack. It was time for another day of just existing. And for now, that had to be enough. Martha wasn't sure when existing had become so exhausting. Walking to school, sitting through classes, doing all the things she had done 1,000 times before, it should have been easy. Automatic. But now, everything felt different. She wasn't just moving through the day. She was waiting. Waiting for someone to notice. Waiting for someone to see her. She wanted to blend in, to just go through the motions without stress. But she also wanted something to happen. Something to tell her that this was real. That this wasn't just in her head. But as she sat in her second period class, staring at her open notebook, the pages still blank, she started to wonder. What if no one ever did? What if she spent every day like this, caught between who she was and who the world thought she was? Her stomach twisted. She needed air. She waited until the teacher wasn't paying attention, then quietly slipped out of her seat, walking toward the door. No one noticed. No one stopped her. She stepped into the hallway, taking a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The walls felt too big, the lights too bright. She leaned against the lockers, pressing her palms against the cool metal. She just needed a minute. Just 1 minute to breathe. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Martha tensed. She wasn't supposed to be out here. She should have gone to the bathroom or at least pretended to have a reason for leaving. But before she could figure out what to do, a familiar voice spoke. "Skipping class? I didn't take you for a rebel." Martha's breath caught. "Ava." She turned, heart pounding. Ava was standing a few feet away, arms crossed, head tilted slightly. She didn't look judgmental. Just curious. Martha swallowed. Not skipping. Just needed air. Ava studied her for a second. Then, to Martha's surprise, she shrugged and leaned against the lockers beside her. "Same." Martha blinked. "You too." Ava smirked. "What? You think you're the only one who needs to escape sometimes?" Martha hesitated. "I just didn't think you'd be the type to ditch class." Ava huffed out a quiet laugh. "I don't ditch. I selectively remove myself from boring situations." Martha snorted. "Right." Silence settled between them. Not awkward, not tense. Just there. For the first time all day, Martha didn't feel like she had to try so hard. Ava glanced at her, eyes flicking over her outfit. "You're really leaning into the new look, huh?" Martha's stomach flipped. Her pulse roared. This was it. This was someone noticing. She swallowed. "You think so?" Ava nodded. "Yeah. It suits you." Martha exhaled slowly. "Thanks." Ava didn't ask why she was dressing differently. She didn't press for answers. She just accepted it. And somehow, that meant more than Martha could put into words. Ava stretched, then pushed off the lockers. "Well, I should probably get back before someone thinks I actually care about math." Martha smiled. "Yeah, me too." Ava gave her a small nod. "Later, Martin." Martha flinched. Ava paused, noticing. Her brow furrowed slightly, like she was piecing something together. "What?" Martha's breath hitched. This was it. This was the moment. Her pulse pounded in her ears. She could let it go. She could pretend it didn't bother her. Or she could take another step forward. A small one. A quiet one. But a step all the same. She inhaled deeply. Then, carefully. "I actually go by Martha now." Ava blinked. She didn't react immediately. She didn't laugh. She didn't question it. She just stood there, processing. Martha's hands clenched into fists, waiting. Then, Ava tilted her head slightly. "Martha, huh?" Martha nodded, throat tight. "Yeah." Ava studied her for a second longer. Then, a slow smile. A real smile. "Cool." Martha's breath rushed out of her. "Cool." Ava shrugged. "Yeah, cool. See you later, Martha." Then she turned and walked away. Martha stood there, frozen. Heart pounding. Head spinning.
Please subscribe my channel for the next part. And visit my Patreon page for early access.